The views and content expressed on the following program are provided solely for informational and entertainment purposes. They do not constitute legal advice. A podcast is not a substitute for retaining a competent, licensed attorney to advise you on your specific legal situation.
Break the business, play is work and work is play. Power in the creators, have fun along the way. Break the business, doing what it takes. Celebrate success and learn from the mistakes.
How's it going, everybody? Welcome to the show. It is time for Break the Business, where we empower indie creators and have some fun along the way. I'm Ryan Kairalla, and it is a pleasure to have you here this week. We got ourselves a really cool program for you. Excited for our guest coming up in the second segment. We're going to be joined by Nadim Rahman, the co-founder and CEO of music technology platform Songproof. I am really interested in the tech players in this space, the folks that are basically developing technology to provide a digital watermark or fingerprint for people's songs so that when you put your song out into the digital world, when you exchange it with other artists, you get an additional layer of protection, a way to prove that that song belongs to you. And if somebody else uses that music without your permission, you have a way of tracking it and bringing that song back to its original source. I think this kind of technology can go a long way in protecting artists and be a nice 1-2 punch right alongside traditional copyright registration to help protect artists. So I'm excited to talk to Nadim in the second segment, learn a bit more about his tech solution in this field, and just learn more about the use cases for this kind of digital music watermarking technology, how it relates to the rise of AI in music. There's a lot to dig into there. I'm excited for it. Also excited to be joined by our co-host this week. Oh, I'm so happy to see this man's, I wouldn't say smiling face. He's way too curmudgeonly to give us a smile, but nonetheless, he brings us the insight, and he's always got so much cool stuff to bring to the proceedings. Gideon King is here. Hi, Gideon. Ooh, I think we have a tech issue with Gideon, or do we need to bring in Gideon? What, producer Lauren, what's going on?
Thing that I can do.
Oh,
there we are.
There we go. Better late than never. How are you, Gideon?
First of all, I do smile. Okay. But I'm good. How are you, man?
Doing very well. I do see a little smirk. It's I wouldn't call it a smile. You give me a smirk sometimes.
Yeah, I'll give you a smirk.
Yeah, that's the Gideon King smirk. It is so good to see you, my friend. Let me talk to you about something here. It's been a bit since you've been on the show, and in the time since you were last on the show, something rather unexpected has happened. Actually, two things that are unexpected have happened. One, the New York Knicks have won the NBA Finals, which is pretty unexpected. But I think even more unexpected than that is the fact that I am happy for them. It's weird. It's weird because, I mean, I'm a South Floridian. I am a diehard Miami Heat fan. I grew up with like 90s Heat Knicks rivalry, fighting on the court. Jeff Van Gundy hanging on Alonzo Mourning's leg like a sea barnacle. I every drop of blood in me just is filled with hatred for the New York Knicks. And yet, I was sitting on my couch, falling in love with your basketball team, Gideon King, becoming enamored with Jalen Brunson and OG Anunoby. I don't know how they got me, Gideon, but they got me. I was rooting for the Knicks.
Well, you know what it is. First of all, glad to be back. Second of all, I've been watching the Knicks since I was 7. And to be in the biggest basketball market in the world and have 0 championships and this just generally lackluster performance was like a really difficult thing for me psychologically and emotionally. And so I did not believe they were going to win the championship this year. I thought it would be really hard to win a championship with a 6'1", not even 6 foot tall point guard. But the reason you found, and by the way, I've never heard of the Miami Heat. Is that a professional basketball team? Does Miami have a professional basketball team, Ryan? I'm just curious.
We just got Giannis Antetokounmpo last week, Gideon. You can't harsh my vibe. I'm actually excited for next season.
Whatever. Listen, what's coming is an Achilles tear on that one. So anyway, at the end of the day, though, the reason you started to fall in love with the Knicks is because they stood in stark contradistinction to the people they played against. For example, you have Victor Wembanyama, who has this great opportunity to be this like poster child for the NBA, but instead he's like elbowing people in the Adam's apple, tripping them, karate kicking people. And so, like, first of all, when a team stands in relief against that, you start to like them. Second of all, the truth is the Knicks are likable. Like Josh Hart, appropriately named, has heart, and he's likable. Jalen Brunson is likable. They're a likable group of guys who hustle, work really hard. And so it's hard to dislike them, even if you're in a basketball market like Miami Heat or the Boston. So I understand why you fell in love with them. I've never seen New York City like this. It was insane. Not quite like the days of when the Yankees would win the World Series and, you know, it was like dangerous to go outside. But, but no, it was super exciting. Amazing run. I do believe, again, in the curmudgeon coming out in me, like you do have these sort of golden moments in time in sports where a pathway opens up to you. And that's what happened, right? The Celtics had injuries and the Oklahoma City Thunder were without their two best player. Oh, sorry, their second and third best players. So it's kind of like in the French Open when Rafael Nadal was out and Federer had his chance to finally win a French Open. So the pathway open to them, but credit them for taking it. And again, I think you should double check your facts. I'm just not even sure Miami has a professional basketball team. And is Miami a city? Is Florida a state in the union? That's my question for you. I don't even know anymore. You're a lawyer. You should.
Where are you coming at? We've won 3 titles in this millennium. Like,
no, I have no recognition of that.
You're talking like we're the Sacramento Kings here. Like we've been a very successful franchise.
Yeah, well, not.
And see, this is by the way why I was shocked that I fell in love with the New York Knicks, because this is what happens. You guys taste a little bit of greatness. You win a little bit, and the insufferable New Yorkers come out in full force. And so all the goodwill that you built up with me over like the last 2 or 3 weeks, like I now get reminded of why I despised your franchise in the first place. Because now you're going to be, oh yeah, New York, we're always winning, baby. Oh my God.
I tried to tell your producer that I was here solely for the purpose of gloating and for no other purpose. That's why I've come to this show today, just so you know.
And look, you've earned all the gloating in the world. I know how long the Knicks have waited for this. And you know, I'm legitimately pleased for you. And I'm just shocked that it happened. I thought y'all were never going to win again. Like this is, you know, I'm glad that you could at least steal one championship away from Wembanyama before he wins like the next 6 and makes the NBA very boring.
But he is giving up on an extraordinary opportunity to be like this face of like sportsmanship and all this. And maybe he'll be a villain, you know, and that'll be his vibe. But man, I mean, like some of that footage of him like flying through the air and like karate kicking OG Anunoby in the knee, it's like that was like pretty out of control. Of course, it was nothing like the Pistons and Bill Laimbeer and all that stuff in the past before any of your listeners were born. So let's not get into it.
Bill Laimbeer, man.
I know.
So I got a couple interesting industry stories I wanted to talk with you about, including one that I'd love to get your perspective on. Since you are a touring musician, a gigging musician, you play a lot of venues. And so I wanted to get your thoughts on the UMAW's recent Raise the Bar campaign announcement. They just announced this a couple days ago. Let me go ahead and brief the viewers and listeners here on what they were announcing. Earlier this month, the UMAW, the United Musicians and Allied Workers, launched a campaign called Raise the Bar, which aims to try to get music venues to publicly commit to more artist-friendly terms when contracting with performers for live shows. The UMAW hopes to get venues to go on the record to publicly pledge for more favorable terms, and they want to list the venues that take the pledge in a public record so that bands and fans can know what venues are aiming to do right by performers. The pledge is pretty simple, Giddy. It's got 4 standards in it. If a venue is willing to do these 4 things when they bring in an artist to play a gig, they can take the pledge. 1, No merch cuts. So a venue has to agree that it will never demand that an artist give up a percentage of the band's merchandise sales for that night while playing at the venue. Number two, no pay to play. That means the venue won't charge the band a fee just to get on stage, whether it's charging the band directly, charging an application fee, or making the artist buy tickets themselves to sell. Number three, no door polling, meaning that when multiple bands are on the bill at the venue isn't going to poll the people who come in at the door and ask those people which band they're there to see and then adjust how much each band makes based on those answers. And then finally, the pledge involves contract transparency. The venue will agree that it will spell out clearly in the venue contracts what the guarantees are, what the door splits are, what the deductions are, how and when an artist gets paid. Those four things, if a venue is willing to agree to them, they can take the pledge. They can list themselves on the UMAW's website. So far, more than 20 venues have already taken the pledge, including the Lab in San Francisco, Club Passim in Cambridge, Mass., and the Jalopy Theater near where you are, Gideon, in Brooklyn. Venues, artists, and fans who are interested in learning more can check out the pledge at weareumaw.org. You gig a lot, Gideon. You've played a lot of venues. You've probably even played some of the venues that might have taken this UMAW pledge. What do you think of this?
Well, I generally hate it. Here's why. One of the things I hate the most about quote unquote advocacy groups is when they adopt mob tactics. And doing this shaming list of people who have signed versus people who haven't signed is the exact, instead of exercising suasion and writing articles and being a real advocacy group, what they're doing is they're going to a bunch of venues and saying, if you don't sign, you won't be on the list. And therefore, at some level, by someone somewhere, you'll be canceled. Okay. So prima facie, to use a legal expression that I thought you might enjoy, it's ugly. What they're doing is ugly. And it's even uglier because they're doing it under the guise of advocacy, artist friendly, and all these words that make a bitter pill to swallow go down more easy. Now, here's the thing. I hate to break it to anybody. Venues don't make money. Okay? The Blue Note's not raking it in New York City. City Winery's not raking it in. Iridium is not raking it in. To shame people out of things like pay to play is ridiculous. Sure, it's not fair at some kind of, in some abstract analytical space. It's not fair to say that an artist should not be, should be able to pay to play to get into a venue, except venues are a business. Okay. They may, UMAW may want to wrap these businesses in some kind of poetic advocacy, but it's nonsense because they're businesses that have to buy inventory, serve drinks, clean up, deal with bands, and then get them in, get them out, get fans in, get them out. And they come and they go like Michelangelo because it's an impossible business. So for these guys under the guise of artist advocacy to say there's a list, okay, of who is appropriately treating artists actually disgusts me. I actually think it's wrong on multiple levels. Now they want to write articles and say it would be nice if there weren't merch cuts, or if they want to argue for it or apply more legitimate forms of suasion, then I'm okay with that. But shaming lists right then and there is disqualifying for me. Oh, and by the way, and that's not to say that some of these causes aren't good. Maybe they aren't fair. Some of these venues in the merch, the merch economics, maybe pay to play isn't cool in many ways. And I'm sure it isn't in many ways. By the way, half the time bands open up for other big bands, they pay to play. Pay to play is like that's the way the world works. So I know what's going to happen. You're going to jump all over me as an artist's advocate, and you're going to say, this is wonderful. It's humane. It's the right way to go. First of all, 20 signups is next to zero. Might as well be negative 20.
They just announced, Giddy.
Who cares? It's going to amount. It's going to be a lot of sound and fury signifying nothing. So my response to this is, it's great. It'll rile people up. It may even rile some artists up. At the end of the day, one way or the other, the artists are going to get paid less if these venues can't do some of these things, if they're shamed out of doing some of these things. It's kind of like taxes. You charge more taxes on corporations, all that happens is wages payable go down. So one way or the other, okay, this is going to hurt artists. These guys should stay out of the way, and never interfere with the mother nature of economics. That's how you destroy value. So I think they're destroyers, not builders. All right, kick me off your show. Go ahead, do it.
I mean, I think you might be skewing a little bit toward the dramatic on this one. I don't think it's ugly. I don't think it's destroying live music as we know it. I think as far as reforms go, this is pretty tame, right? This isn't a shaming list. They're not listing all of the venues who do practice pay to play, nor are they like trying to lobby legislatures to enforce these things with law. All they're doing is saying, if you are willing to adopt these reforms, if you are willing to treat artists in this manner, we're going to highlight your great work. And now we're going to let the marketplace decide. Maybe as a music fan, I want to frequent venues that I know are going to give artists these terms. As an artist, I might want to gravitate more and support the venues who are providing these kind of terms. Like, isn't this kind of transparency, which is completely voluntary? Like, this seems as, capitalist and free market as it gets. We're not making anybody do anything. This is just transparency.
First of all, you used a word which is, in my mind, extremely inflammatory and not actually accurate. You said some of these reforms. I don't know what you think you're reforming. I'm not aware that pay to play or merch deals are a violation of any law. I'm not even sure they're a violation of good faith economic arm's length dealing. So calling them reforms already means you've drunk the Kool-Aid, and that's dangerous. And anytime you have lists,
dangerous
in a free society, once you start making lists, and I don't need to come up with all the horrible examples in history, once you start making lists,
Gideon,
killing freedoms, buddy. So I hate it. I think it's wrong. And by the way, I'm not particularly exercised about it because it's going to go nowhere.
Not exercised about it.
It's going to go nowhere.
You just made the implication of this being like the same kind of list that we would associate with like the most abhorrent, crimes in human history.
No, that's the extrapolation you drew. I don't like lists. Making lists affirmatively, in this case, saying these are the people that are, participating. These are people I don't like it. I don't like lists. Lists is a bad place to start your advocacy. But I know it's a fact of life. Food, people, nutrition advocacy groups list who's using, artificial dyes in their candy. So I get it, but I think it's wrong. I don't like it.
We do it all the time in business. We have certification marks, right? Yeah. Like if the food that you are making has real cheese in it, you can use the real cheese logo on your food. Like, nobody thinks that that's like a violation of economic practices. Like, as a consumer, I'd like to know that the thing I'm eating has real cheese. And as a consumer, I'd like to know what venues aren't going to take a cut of my favorite artist's merch.
And that's a matter of reform based upon legislation that has been passed. I'd like you to show me in the next show where there's legislation about merch cuts and where there's legislation about buy-ons and opening acts. All that's going to happen. And this has been this way since the year 1500 BC. Okay. All that's going to happen is these entities are going to sign on. They're going to be like, this is awesome. We got the imprimatur. And then they're going to find the economics and take it out of the artist in one way or the other, in some area where the four corners of this advocacy nonsense doesn't cover certain four corners of economics or dark, sort of shadows of contracts. It's not going to do anything for artists. It's just more performative nonsense. And I don't like performative nonsense.
I don't think it is. I know of lots of independent venue owners who hold to this view, who, because of the way they feel about the industry and their own personal ethics, they don't have a pay to play model in their venue. And maybe that costs them some of their bottom line, but maybe it doesn't. Like maybe there could be a model where because they are known as this and they know an artists gravitate towards venues that adhere to those tenets, it will make artists want to play there and it'll make fans want to go there. I mean, like put the actual like put the actual like pledge aside. Like, do you think that pay to play is fundamentally a positive for music? Like, do you think that, like, I don't like the idea of bands like who don't have money getting priced out of being able to play gigs at certain venues because they can't pony up cash.
But here's the thing. You're asking the wrong question. Whether they do pay to play or not, okay, doesn't matter. They're going to get it some other way. There's going to be a venue that says, I would never do pay to play. And guess what? When a 5-piece band comes and there's, say, 240 people there, okay, is they're going to actually pay a band less of the door, less of whatever, and they're going to make the economics equal themselves out. It's kind of like when you buy a car and you say, you come home to your friend, you say, I got a great deal. I put up $2,100 instead of $800, and my lease payments went down. It's 6.5 one dozen. It's a matter of present values and amortizations. Same thing in a venue with drinks and so on. Just because there isn't pay to play doesn't mean there isn't pay to play, and there isn't the economic equivalency of it. And it's going to be imposed. That economic equivalency, it may not be as obvious, but it will be imposed. Now, maybe one of the venue owners are smarter because they're going to say to Ryan Kairalla, they're going to say, hey, we don't do pay to play. And Ryan's going to pat him on the back and he's going to say, you're lovely. You really understand the artist. And then they're going to give that 5-piece band $1,200 for the night instead of $1,650. And there it is. And so like this notion that some will operate in a different economic model than others is not true. It's not true. It will get, the economics will play out, and it'll be a rose by any other name. Sorry, buddy. I do it. I'm playing 3 gigs. I'm playing a big venue, a medium-sized venue, and I don't even know what venue in New York City. And they all have their own little model. We don't do this to you, but we'll do it. And I look at it, it's like, it's all the same thing at the end of the day. And so like, we shouldn't kid ourselves about advocacy. It's just nature and moving chess pieces around a board, but nobody's really winning more or losing more at the end of the day. I know that's super cynical, but
it might be among the more cynical things you have said on this program, which is that is a tall mountain for you to climb. Like it's what we love when Gideon King shows up. We want that delicious cynicism, but I mean, you are also a free market guy. You are a business guy. And one of like the fundamental tenets of what makes free markets work is information and transparency between buyers and sellers, not hiding aspects of the transaction. So anything that puts more information out there. Information is good. Like letting people know what this venue is going to do. Pledging to have transparency in your contracts about things like guarantees and deductions and when you're going to get paid. I've run into so many problems when I've dealt with venues on behalf of artists where the venue promises one thing to my client and then they don't pay the artist for 3 weeks and they say, show me in the contract where it says I have to pay you right after the show. Like transparency is good. Information's good.
I don't know. I just played Brooklyn Bowl, open for the Spin Doctors. The place was packed. I knew exactly. My manager knew exactly what we were going to get paid, how much and when. Blue Note, same thing. I've played City Winery multiple times. Joe's Pub, Iridium. I just did the Iridium with Eric Gales. He knew what he was getting paid. I knew what I was getting paid. That's the other thing. This word transparency. People are always clamoring for the word transparency. Ask the question, get the terms. Raise hell if they don't pay you. I've never had a single problem, not one single time ever playing with a single venue. I've found them all to be pretty honorable. They pay extremely little and they make no money. They make nothing and they pay nothing. And that's pretty much what it is. I've never seen a problem with transparency. And actually, like, you got to be a grown up and say, excuse me, what am I getting paid exactly? I've never had a single issue, never once.
And I don't see how that reality can't exist the venues you've dealt with, a lot of them have been honest with you, and I think that's great. I don't see why it's so much of a problem the way you're bringing it up
I
to
don't like
also provide an optional course. Like, nobody's requiring venues to disclose this, but an optional course where the venues can mention somewhere on a website, hey, if you do business with us, we're going to agree to these 4 things. And nobody's holding a gun to the venue's head and making them do it, but it's more information.
I don't like lists. I don't think it's any more information. All that's going to happen is people are going to they're going to put themselves on that list. They're going to pat themselves on the back. A few people, I think, out of naivete are going to say, ooh, that's a more artist-friendly venue. The economics are going to work out the same, because you can't afford to be in a business with margins that thin and change your economic model meaningfully. Do you hear me? It's not possible. This is all performative nonsense. It's not possible to change the economic model dramatically when the margins are that thin. Period. Full stop. Something's got to give somewhere. So anyway, that's how I feel about it. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm open to being wrong, but man, I've been around.
I mean, where would we be without some good old-fashioned performative nonsense? I want to, before we bring in our guest, I wanted to give a quick opportunity to answer a listener question here. I've tried to be better about answering listener questions, and I think we got a good one this week. Listener asks, I am working with a producer who is asking for publishing. What does that mean? Would that make them a songwriter? When does a producer become a songwriter for the song that they are working on? That's a very, very good question, and it's one that the role of a producer, and particularly when a producer becomes a songwriter, has become a significant issue as of late. The lines are blurring between what's a songwriter, what's a producer, what's an artist. Let me start with the easier part of the question first, which is, what does it mean when somebody asks for publishing? Traditionally in the music industry, when somebody asks for publishing, they're asking to be a co-writer. They want to be one of the writers on the song that you're working on, which means that they would own a piece of the copyright in the song. They'd get paid royalties like a songwriter would. They'd get their publisher's share, their writer's share, all that jazz. And it used to be in the old days, probably even before, like long before I was practicing law or even living, there was a pretty clear delineation between a songwriter and a producer. You wrote a song with songwriters. You then took that song to a producer, this completed song, and said, hey, producer, make this into a record. And the producer would get paid off the master recording, and the songwriter royalties would stay with the songwriters. And generally, there was a pretty clear divide between songwriter and producer. But in more modern times, as with the rise of genres like EDM and hip hop, and even some forms of pop where it's hard to know where the written song ends and the recorded version of that song begins, you're seeing more and more producers also get a piece of the publishing, getting treated as one of the songwriters on a record. And so it can be pretty hard to sort of just, figure out when that producer has done enough to the actual music and lyrics to be treated as a songwriter. And the short answer is it's whatever you agree to. If the producer working with you has enough leverage to basically say, I've done enough on the music and lyrics to be treated as a songwriter, then they're going to negotiate for some publishing. And it's becoming more and more common in the industry these days. And it's not as outrageous as it used to be. And if you want to give the producer a little bit of the publishing because they have given you some good ideas on the music and the lyrics, no problem. It's becoming increasingly a standard practice. I know this has got to be something you encounter a lot, Gideon, with all the producers you work with.
What's happened is that there's like a hyper state of collaboration in music now. Just as an exemplification, take an A-list artist like Jacob Collier. Okay, when he releases a song, it's like Jacob Collier featuring Lizzie McAlpine, featuring blah 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 blah, and there's all these hands on the recipe. There's all these hands on the stew. And I know I just produced a song called "Put the Chip in My Brain" the other day, and I looked around the room, and the drummer was doing really unique things. The music engineer did something really cool with the intro. I was banging out lyrics and some chord changes, but the actual creative essence, even though I wrote the lyrics and the chords, that didn't mean a damn thing. The creative essence of the song, the stops, the breaks, there was a meter change, was really a collaborative effort. So, what I would say to the questioner, the listener who asked this question is, what is the musical essence of a given song, right? And if a person, whether they call themselves the producer or chief bottle washer or point guard for the Lakers, you know, if they contributed appreciably to that musical essence, they deserve something. And the delineations of, well, I wrote the lyrics and I wrote the chords and the other person did this, and you shouldn't include groove in publishing rights and all the legal stuff that people have battled over the years. I think you need to take a step back from that, given the way technology works in this hyper state of collaboration. And you need to ask yourself the question, would this tune have come out the way it did, which presumably is to my liking, otherwise I wouldn't be releasing it, if it weren't for this person or that person's contribution? And that's where the essence of fairness comes in. And that's when you owe people something. So, like, even though I write the lyrics and the music to my songs, this song put the chip in my brain. Like, I literally wrote all the lyrics and all the music, I think. But it's so cool. And it is not so cool because of me. It's so cool because of some weird, I'm not allowed to swear, some weird stuff that our musical director and keys guy, along with the drummer and also the recording engineer, did. And it's super hip, and it just wouldn't have been if I had done it all. And so they deserve something. And accordingly, I will give them something. In fact, I'll give them most of what they want, because then they'll come back and want to put that kind of work in again. So now you're seeing the softer side of Gideon here.
We're getting all the sides of you.
You're seeing the softer side of me. I'm sorry.
What you're describing there is a pretty interesting shift in what we would define as a songwriter, because in the old days, it used to just be the songwriter is lyrics and melody.
Yeah.
And everything else in the recording, the arrangements, the chords, the progressions, the starts, the stops, the essence, as you described it, was always just considered production, and the people who contributed those elements wouldn't usually be treated as songwriters. But as you noted, Gideon, the song that you're loving didn't become the song that people are loving without all of those elements, and those elements are inseparable from the written song. And so we have seen this shift where now those people are being more and more deemed as songwriters, those producers who contribute those elements. Yeah. And so they're getting a piece of those royalties.
It's almost, and I'll go super quick, it's like a relay race. It's like there's fatigue in a studio. You start, you bring the chord change to the skeleton, and then you get tired. And the pianist is like, okay, I got it. And he takes it. And then the drummer takes it. And then the recording engineer is like, okay, we got to redo the background voice. And it's like a relay race where you're constantly handing the baton off. And if you don't acknowledge that, you're kind of missing the essence of where credit should be allocated.
That's very, very well put. And what I would just say here at the end is, however you decide to slice that pie with your producers / songwriters, that's fine. It's the Wild West right now, and you can come up with different arrangements. But whatever you decide, make sure it's papered. Whoever the songwriters are, get that in a split sheet. Whatever the producer split is on the master side, get that papered in a producer agreement. Don't do handshake deals. Don't assume that everybody knows who a songwriter is. Get that stuff on the record so that you don't have headaches later. Let us take a quick break. We're going to be joined by Nadim Rahman of Songproof. It's going to be great. Don't go anywhere. Keep checking out Break the Business.
Cool.
Break the Business is presented in cooperation with Ryan A. Kairalla, PA. Ryan A. Kairalla, PA is a law firm providing transactional entertainment legal services, including contracts, business formation, commercial law, copyright, trademark, and more. Ryan A. Kairalla, PA, Miami, Florida. rkpalaw.com.
Streaming services for Break the Business provided by LEK Entertainment. LEK Entertainment is a full-service entertainment company offering everything from consultations to full-scale events and productions, including audio and video productions, voiceovers, staged theatrical productions, script and music development, and streaming services. For more information, visit lekentertainment.com. LEK Entertainment wants to help you bring your story to life.
Thanks for supporting Break the Business. If you have a question or topic that you want us to discuss, email us at breakthebusiness@gmail.com. You can follow the host, that's me, on Twitter at Ryan Kair, and you can follow the show at the BTB Podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the show on Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook, and on all major podcast platforms. And now, let's get back to the show. Welcome back to Break the Business, everybody. Ryan Kairalla here with Gideon King. Thank you very much for your perspective there, Gideon. I really lean on the fact that, even though I'm coming in with my legal background and all those things, the listeners really benefit from those listener questions, getting to talk to somebody who is on the ground, who's actually making and producing these kind of records and are exploring these things in real time. Love the perspective you gave there.
Appreciate it.
All right, let's go ahead and bring in our guest this week. He is the co-founder and CEO of Songproof, a newly launched Toronto-based music technology platform built to help songwriters and creators document ownership before their music is ever released or shared. The platform launched in June 2026 with more than 500 songs already registered from creators across 40-plus countries. You can find out more at songproof.com. We are happy to welcome Nadine Rockman on to Break the Business. Hello, sir.
Hey, how are you, Ryan? Hey, Gideon, how are you?
Good to see you.
Good.
I'm excited to chat with you about this. I was mentioning at the top of the show that we're seeing a lot more technology in this space that is trying to create a solution for the fact that as music becomes more digital, as it becomes more freely shared online, as AI is taking a bigger impact in music, and all of these things are creating a greater and greater need for people being able to trace who owns what, who created what, and how do I protect my music before it's been published. And so digital watermarking solutions, fingerprinting solutions like Songproof are rising to meet that challenge. I want to talk a little bit about your background and how it brought you to creating or co-founding this platform. You were a drummer and a songwriter long before you became a tech founder. And then you spent decades in engineering and technology. So you got these two sides of the coin that both are equally critical to being able to create a platform like Songproof. How did these two halves of your life, the music half and the tech and engineering half, come together to help you create this platform?
Very, very interesting question. I often ask myself that question also. And the answer is not easy, but the honest answer is that music has always been part of my life. As a young person, I was pretty much into the music industry. I had a successful band, kind of climbed the ladder that most bands do. I'm talking back in the early '80s, and anyhow, things didn't work out the way it did. And I knew always at that time the reason that I bounced out of that was because of the massive contract and the legal stuff that was presented in front of me. Because you're right, as a drummer, I happen to be also be a songwriter, which is a pretty interesting combination. Not usually seen, except for a few cases. So I left the music industry, and then life took its own course, and I got into engineering and spent the last 25 years or so plus in engineering. Uh, did relatively well, but music has always been part of my DNA. And I still jam with people. I still go to concerts. I still hanging out the backstage is the vibe that really resonates with me. Um, and then in the last about a year ago this time, I had some personal setbacks, family wise. I lost my mother and all that, and I was trying to find myself where I actually what is it that I want to do. I've done a lot. What society would consider, I guess, um, whatever they want to consider. I've done that. Now, the question is that where do I see myself going ahead? How do I see the rest 15, 20 years of my life? What does that look like? And I had to go back to music, and then I tackled the question why I left music. And that's where the idea of songproof literally came about. And it's going to sound peculiar when I tell you this, but it was a dream. I just got up one morning. I said, "Hey, this got merit." And whatever I thought about, now I had the technical background to put it in place. And I knew the whole thing started with. And I was listening to the conversation earlier, and Ryan, you mentioned about split sheet. Now, how do you capture the essence of what you're creating through different versioning that goes through that Gideon raised? Because everybody has to be given proper respect.
Mm-hmm.
And Ryan, you mentioned that that don't have a handshake, put it in writing, do something. But we've all been in this environment where you're sitting with your bandmates, and I mean, you're high fiving each other, and you have the best of intention. But how do you document that? And this was the problem back in the 80s, also, by the way. Exactly the same problem. The problem hasn't changed, in my opinion. So, Songproof, what it does is that it has a built in split sheet. And when you decide the split, it could be three, four people sitting together. It could be one person in the middle of the night who comes up with this great melody, great tune. They just want to record it and they want to give themselves the credit, which they can change afterwards.
Right.
Uh, and that's where the idea of Soundproof came out. So our split sheet is basically blockchain based. So the split sheet is actually, now I'm going to get a little technical. I hope I don't bore people, but unfortunately, there's no easy way of saying it. We put it on a blockchain called Polygon, which has a smart contract. And then we take the whole smart contract, which also has the audio, by the way, in a binary format.
Yeah, like what's being split sheeted in terms of like who owns what is tied. My understanding is that it's tied to like a specific fingerprint of that audio, so that
Correct.
you know exactly what audio it's corresponded to, and it's all backed up on the blockchain.
It's all backed up on the Polygon blockchain. Then we take the entire Polygon blockchain and we timestamp it on the Bitcoin blockchain. So it's a dual stamping process. So it's not just one, this or that. We are taking the best of what the smart contract gives us, and we're taking the whole thing and we are timestamping it on the Bitcoin. And these are the two the two blockchains that are very well recognized and respected. So that's technical jargon. So that was the actual idea behind it. And then if you want to add more people, you just create another split sheet. The beauty of blockchain is that it remembers everything you've done. So you see a history of everything that goes on. As long as you're the owner, you start with 100% or 50%, whatever the split is initially. You are the owner of that record, and you can change it as you want. And it's all there. And it's a public blockchain. So some people ask me that, okay, so it's a startup. Yeah, granted. What happens if you guys don't exist? What happens to my record? Well, the beauty is that it's a public blockchain. Even if I don't exist, that record is there forever. The whole Bitcoin world is born on that concept. And so that's where the whole thing came from. And then obviously it took different shapes along the way, but that's the story that Ryan, that you asked me.
Yeah, I definitely see the need, and in the creating process before the song becomes done and it gets released and it gets out into the world, there can be a lot of questions about who owns what and who created what, and I think this can help to fill that need there. I mentioned at the beginning of the show that I think these kind of solutions act as sort of a support to the existing legal infrastructure that we use to demonstrate people's rights to music, right? I've always tried to impart to people that solutions like Songproof should not be seen as a substitute for traditional copyright registration,
Absolutely.
because copyright registration comes with a lot of legal benefits. You shouldn't just rely on time stamping to prove that you own something. But you put these two things together, right? Technology that proves ownership and splits and when stuff was created, along with formal copyright registration to protect your legal rights. Those two things together are pretty valuable.
Yeah, I mean, truth be told, I mean, in our team, we have a pretty good mix of people. We have an entertainment lawyer as a part of the group, and she was very active in the process. And we have a person with a lot of years in the music industry in marketing, and I myself being who I am. We put this thing together, and we looked at every aspect of it. And legally speaking, statutory damages, which you're referring to, Ryan, in terms of the U.S. copyright,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. It's one of the benefits you get with
was the
copyright
benefit. That
registration.
was the benefit, which is great. But you do also know that this is only in the U.S. Most of the world doesn't have any statutory damage. You have to actually prove what your damage is. And where does the question always come from? Can you prove when you made it? And that's the problem that people haven't. We all know that the problem exists. How do you provide what your damages are if you cannot prove when you made it?
Nadeem, I have a question for you.
Hmm.
In motorcycle riding,
Hmm.
many people buy gear, but they don't wear it. And when they crash, they suffer injuries that they shouldn't have suffered. I do it. I ride a motorcycle everywhere, and
Mhm.
sometimes I don't wear the right gear, and it's really dumb. And my wife hates it and yells at me, um, rightly so. Um, at what point do these people, metaphorically speaking, put on this gear? So I have a great idea, okay, for my song and my lyric. I come to the studio with 5 people in the studio. There's background singers, so on, there's a producer, whatever. But where in the continuum do you see your software, if you want to call it that? I don't know if I'd call it software, but whatever. What is the user interface? One. And two, how do you avoid it being a bummer? So me, you, Ryan, get into the room. I have a great idea for a song. Everybody's excited, and I say, "Oh, no. Stop." Um, Ryan, he came up with the idea for the shaker, and he's using Ableton, and I came up with the chord changes and so on and so forth. Meaning, if you get to it too early, you'll kill the creative buzz. So my question is, what is the user interface? How do you induce people to put on this protective gear without killing the ride? Again, extending the metaphor. Okay, I don't need to continue on. You understand the question I'm asking.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and that's a great question. Very good question, Gideon. So you talk about use cases. So what are the best use cases I can think of? Okay, one of the best use cases I can think of, and this has happened recently. Um, so we do have an app. Obviously, we have the website. We have an app as well, both in Apple and Android. So the way I see this working, and this has actually been working this way. So you guys do what you guys. You're in a group environment. You're in a band environment. You do your creative. None of this matters at that point. None of this matters at that point. But when you're high-fiving each other and you're feeling good about what you've created, one of the guys says, "Hey, man, look, I got this app. Take it out. And if I happen to have an MP3 file or a WAV file, which may not be reality at that moment, unless somebody's recording it, I can drag and drop it into the app, and I can songproof it, meaning I can actually create the spreadsheet that, what's your email address? What's your email address? I say, why you want my email address? Well, I'm going to songproof it. What the hell is songproof? Oh, you're going to get an email. You're going to actually have a catalog. You just accept it. You're going to get catalog with the spreadsheet. And you do that right away. Or there's also a live record. So if you hit the live record, it's like a voice memo.
Mhm.
But you put it on and you're jamming away. And at the end, you can say, hey, John, do you agree that I have 10%, you have 20%, you have this and that? It is a blockchain based verbal agreement right then and there, or you can even
But,
record the
but, not,
music.
but Nadeem, is it an agreement without counsel represented, or can one say, I'm just a percussionist, I'm just an unsophisticated percussionist, and I had Ryan Kairalla there defending my rights, and instructing me on the legal concepts governing this whole thing. I never would have done this. I was there and I was drinking beers, and they told me to do it. So
Yeah, so we ran into that issue. So whenever you come up with something very unique, these questions are very normal. So we went through this process, and talking with Henna, she's the legal counsel. I mean, she's the legal part of this thing. The blockchain evidence is actually accepted in a lot of places. There are landmark cases that accepts it. In fact, the WIPO, which is the World Intellectual Property Organization, they accept blockchain evidence of timestamping. Okay, now you go in front of a judge or you go in front of anybody, depending on how bad your dispute is. The question is going to come up: do you have any evidence or proof of when you made it? Most lawyers are not even going to take on a case unless you can give some form of evidence, because damages are based on, at least from my understanding, I may be wrong, but just from my understanding, the damages are based on when did you create it, when did somebody steal it and made more money with it. So if you don't have a timestamp of when you did it, in whichever format that you have, well, you have to start
I
a
see.
few miles down the course. So again, all these things are getting worked out right now. It's still at a very early infancy stage, but I can tell you from our research, and Henna can actually give you a lot more background on this, that blockchain evidence are being accepted as actual evidence.
Cool.
Well,
Okay.
you noted that you're in the early stage of this app. And I would imagine, if I were working with a company like yours, I would imagine a big part of your strategy is going to be creating strategic partnerships with rights management companies, creating professional tools for labels and publishers, maybe working with the PROs and
Yep.
creating
Yep.
solutions for them there. Can you talk a little bit about like what the next 5 years looks like and what some of those integrations and partnersits
Well, yeah,
you have that you're
absolutely.
looking to form?
Everybody wants to thinks that I have a crystal ball, but I'll take a shot at it.
But I mean, I only ask because it's an important
Yeah,
consideration, right?
absolutely.
If you're
So we
developing tools
are.
in this space, you have to work with and play with the existing rights infrastructure, and
Right.
the government part of the infrastructure, the private sector part of the infrastructure. It's very complicated. None of these things talk to each other. They're all very siloed, and it's the job of tech platforms like yours, and it's not an easy job to figure out how to work with all of these existing pieces of the infrastructure.
Great question, Ryan. Thank you for asking that. And yes, we are in the process of talking to a lot of people of the type that you mentioned, including some PROs. Uh, because one of the biggest problem with PRO is that money gets stuck if there's a dispute.
Yeah.
And again, the question comes is prove it that you're actually saying what it is. Sometimes it's an honest mistake by people who are registering it. I'm not saying they're doing it maliciously, but it happens. So yes, we are in talk with some PROs. I'm not going to disclose the names right now, but we are talking to some of them. Early stage, we are talking to a lot of songwriting organizations and people who have influence in this area, and they're seeing the value of what we're trying to do. We're not competing with anybody. We are providing a early stage evidence. I mean, I hate using this word because it feels like I'm cheaping my own product, but it's like a birth certificate of your song.
Yeah. And another innovation that's kind of bubbling up alongside all of these other innovations that I'm sure you're always thinking about is AI, right? And one of the biggest movements that's being bandied about with respect to AI is if we decide that the people who've created songs and recordings that are being used to train AI platforms are entitled to some compensation. We need to figure out how to get those rights owners paid. We need to figure out how much, if I ask Suno to make an AI song for me, how much of each particular previous song was used to train the AI to make that song I asked Suno to make for me? How do we get all those rights owners paid? And I would imagine that watermarking, fingerprinting technologies like yours can help us figure out which rights owners deserve to get
Yes.
paid, because it can help trace a line from the final Suno work to the works that actually helped create that work.
Couldn't agree more. I mean, how this gets played out in the business environment is a different discussion. But in terms of providing some kind of evidence to have this conversation, is the space that we're in. I mean, businesses like Suno, businesses like not only Suno, many, many other types of AI businesses that are out there. And I mean, it's kind of cute. I've used Suno. I mean, I've done it. I'm not going to lie to you. It's just kind of fun. Okay. But the point is, I've done it once or twice, but I felt not good about it because it didn't seem right to me. But that's my personal bias. Uh, so to answer your question, Ryan, we don't know what the business world how is going to treat all this stuff. We are just providing evidence that people can have this conversation.
And it's, I mean, having done a ton of venture capital and a lot of deals, it is, what you're saying is reasonable, and it's like, you know you're trying to come up with a simple solution in a kind of narrow area, as opposed to trying to predict pathways that are impossible to predict. But you're basically saying somebody needs to memorialize this crap, and somebody, and there has to be a better way to do it. And so you're coming up with almost a standard template. And back in my days in Wall Street, and all the different instruments that were traded, bank debt and all these things, ultimately there had to be a simple way to memorialize things and to create contracts. There was something called the ISDA, and that was like a
Yeah.
big thing in Wall Street. You know about an ISDA,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
So you're just trying to memorialize ownership and credit in a simple way. So I respect the simplicity of this, although I know that getting this to work and the APIs or user interface, I know it's complex to build this,
Yeah.
and I know it costs money. No, it's a cool idea, man. It's a cool idea.
Yeah, but thank you for allowing me to speak today to you guys and being part of this, because my job as a CEO, apart from having a vision, which um, I hold very dearly, because this touches me on a very personal level. This is not just a business I'm doing. I've done enough business. Um, it's a different ride for me this time around.
Cool stuff.
Our guest has been Nadeem Rahman. He is the co-founder and CEO of Songproof. You can find out more about our guest's work by visiting songproof.com. Nadeem, this has been awesome. Appreciate you kind of giving us a perspective on some cutting edge music tech here. Before we let you go, we got one last question for you. Do you
Sure.
have any last tips for the indie creators out there to help them move their careers forward?
Yes, actually, we do. We are actually in our platform. We have something called Artist of the Week, where we have a form that if they want to fill up, they can actually submit their music, and we will use our leverage, our popularity. Although we are very early stage, nothing to really talk home about, but we're giving back. We are actually showcasing them. No cost, no money. We're just showcasing them. And we have quite a few artists of the week already lined up. And I know that we're not as big, like we don't have a million followers and all this kind of stuff. I mean, but it's our small way of saying thank you. And we're doing it on a global scale. So it's not only local music, English music, what we've grown up with. We have musicians from all over the world who wants to be part of this journey.
I dig that. Our thanks to Nadine Rockman and Gideon King. Thanks to producer Lauren. And thanks to all of you viewers and listeners for checking out Break the Business. We'll see you next week.